So in the previous section, we generated a test over here on our Visual Studio project and we uploaded it over to App Center. In this section, we're going to start to distribute our application to our users throughout two different channels, as we saw in the previous lecture. The first one, directly from our test branch, is going to be distributed directly through App Center to a distribution group that we're going to set up in this lecture. The second one is going to be from the master branch over to the App Store. Now, in addition to setting up those distribution groups in App Center, in this lecture I also want to make sure that all of the code that I have locally, especially this new test, is already over on GitHub and that I give access to that particular repository to my other GitHub account as we did in one of the previous sections. So all I have to do is navigate over to my terminal, and it seems that I indeed have pushed everything over to the remote already. We can of course double check by just executing git status, and indeed there is nothing to commit. And I can also execute git log to take a look at all of my commits. And indeed it seems that feature 8 is already on the remote feature 8, so everything is over on GitHub. At least in my case, make sure that it is your case as well. So having all of that over on GitHub, I can navigate over to GitHub and start a pull request to have all of that feature 8 over on dev. And by the way, since I have completed that test, I have closed the issue that we created to prepare our project for tests. So that is the first thing that I will do, create a new pull request to have everything that is new on feature 8 merged into the dev branch. And I will create the pull request. As we know, as soon as we create this pull request, a couple of builds are going to be triggered over on App Center. One for Android, one for iOS. We've seen this happen on our continuous integration section. Something very similar we're going to be doing a couple of times on this section, except we're going to be doing it on branches that are both going to have more protection rules and that are not only going to be triggering these builds when the pull request and when the merge happens, but they are going to be triggering a continuous delivery process. So that is what we're going to be doing throughout this section. While these builds complete and I am able to merge the pull request, I am going to navigate over to the Settings tab. And in the Settings tab, I will show you that I have already set a collaborator. This is the same GitHub account, additional GitHub account that I showed you in one of the previous sections. So all I did was, of course, after giving access to this account, was navigate over to my inbox, accept the invitation, so I now have push access to this repository. And that means, of course, that from my other GitHub account, I have access to this repository in the exact same way as the original account. And I can, of course, also see this pull request and the checks that are in progress. So, perfect. Also, while this happens, I am going to go ahead and execute the thing that is most important for this lecture. We've already done these things a few times throughout this course. So what I want to focus on is creating over on App Center the distribution groups. As I have mentioned, distribution groups are going to be, of course, groups of people that can eventually have access to my application. And that is exactly what will happen in our repository in the case of the test branch. The test branch is going to be, in this scenario, triggering a continuous integration process that enables certain users to download this application into their devices and start testing it. So I can navigate to each of the apps, click on Distribute, and notice that on Distribute we're going to have both groups and stores. The stores, we're going to leave this for a further lecture in this section. Right now we're going to be focusing on groups. So here I can also create a distribution group. And in this case I am being requested the group name, but also directly I could allow public access in case I want to allow anyone to download this app, which won't be our case, or I can invite certain people, certain testers to this group. So I am indeed going to name this group beta testers. And in here, all I have to do is write the email address of those people whom I am going to invite. So I will, for example, write this email right here. And we can, of course, add more and more people to this group. And eventually, all of the people that we add to this group are going to receive releases of our application when we set to distribute from the test branch. So every time we merge into the test branch and a new build is created, that new build is going to be distributed to these users. I am just going to leave one user in here. I think it's going to be enough for me to show you how is it that we can distribute to them. Again, it doesn't matter how many users you have in here. They will all have to follow the exact same steps that we're going to see with this account in here. So I will just go ahead and create this group. So in here, now that the group is created, we're going to see a few tabs. The overview is not very useful right now because we have no releases at all. We could actually create manually new releases by uploading IPA or APK files. That is not what we're going to do. We want continuous delivery. But that is exactly what we're going to wait for a continuous delivery process to create a new release in here. And those releases are also going to be available here, so we'll take a look at these two tabs later on. In the testers tab, we can of course see all of the people that are part of this beta testers group. And it is in here where I could add more and more if I wanted to. Now, the tab that I want to show you right now is the devices tab. And this tab is only going to exist on iOS applications. And the deal with this tab is that for us to run an iOS application on a device when it is not yet released through the App Store or in a final version, we'll take a look at that later, we need to register each of the devices with our Apple account. And of course, we're not going to have to do that manually. App Center is going to do that for us. But here, all of those registered devices are going to appear. So the process is going to be our beta testers receiving an invitation to download our application. And when they accept the invitation, they will have to add some other thing to their iOS devices. We're of course going to take a closer look at that when the time comes. For now, at that point, when they download that profile that App Center is going to give them, their devices get registered directly with their Apple accounts, and they will appear in here. So this tab right here is